I'm gonna swing.
You sound like some cross between Sia and a pig.
Butterscotch shenanigans. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 43 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I do web-related things.
I'm Sam, and I make the art things.
And today is March 29th, 2016. And before we get started, we have a warning. Anything could happen on this show. There's gonna be crudeness. Maybe there's gonna be prudeness also.
Not
a little bit.
a lot of prudeness.
Yeah, but if you are prude and you don't like crude language, then get the hell out of here. Go
Take
listen
that
to something
dude
else.
elsewhere.
And of course, we have missed 3 weeks. 2 weeks.
300 podcasts.
We were at GDC for a while, and so we weren't able to podcast while we were there. And then while we were at GDC, we all got the
flu.
Black Death. Yeah, I picked up the flu halfway through.
Yeah, you got 2 Black Deaths, didn't you?
I think I got 2 different diseases,
Like a gray death and a black death or something?
Yeah, it was sort of a multicolored fusion of death. And then as we were leaving GDC, Sam got it as well.
I was shivering on the airplane, and I was trying not to let the stewardess see so they wouldn't kick me off.
And this was nasty. Like, this was some nasty stuff.
Yeah, man. I was getting nightly fevers. I remember one of the days at GDC after Seth had his fevering day, he came out for meetings and stuff, and he would just randomly start sweating.
I was just covered in a sheen of sweat. It was weird. There was this one gentleman who we just bumped into randomly while we were waiting in a hotel lobby to meet with somebody, and he started chatting with us. And I felt weirdly bad for him because he was chatting up with us, and I could tell he was kind of weirded out by the fact that I was really, really sweaty for no reason.
Your head just had beads of
I just
water
had sweat, just running down. And I'm bald, so if I had hair, my hair would probably absorb it or something. But the baldness just lets it just run free.
Yeah, you
free
look
range.
Particularly sweaty when you get sweaty.
Yeah, so I'm sure that made everybody else really uncomfortable. But more importantly, it gave everybody else diseases.
Yeah, so apparently tons of people got the GDC flu this year, including 2/3 of us. Adam managed to dodge it somehow.
But I did have a really hyperactive GERD episode.
Yeah, so we all came out.
It
on
was
top
not
somehow.
Basically, last week was spent with us recovering in a sickness and health sense from the plagues of GDC, which is why we weren't around for doing podcasting stuff. That's our excuse, anyways.
But
what you guys are up to.
Speaking of GDC, let's talk about it.
Yeah,
what happened?
Let's speak about it.
Aside from getting diseased and then feeling like garbage for 2 weeks,
it was pretty neato. So we really planned this one out a bit more so than we usually do.
Oh, wait. What is GDC?
GDC is the Game Developers Convention in San Francisco, and about 27,000 game developers bought tickets.
Well, about 5,000 game developers and 25,000 ad companies trying to put their ads into people's games.
So
it's a good mix.
It's always a good time, and there's just so many people who all do games, and it's really fun for us to go and visit, obviously, because there's just it's like a pool of our people, But finding the people who are truly our people within that mass, who aren't the ad company people or trying to make us give away 20,000 Steam keys for Crashlands for various purposes. It's harder to kind of sort those subgroups out. So we did, I think, a really good job this year before getting there of having a lot of these meetings with really cool people lined up already. So not only with the platform holders like iTunes and Google Play and PlayStation, Sony, but also just with other cool devs. Like we met the guys from Pretty Great who made Landsliders, which is really fun. We got to hang out with Trinket, who make Battle Chef Brigade, which is coming out sometime in the next while. But yeah, we just got to hang out with a bunch of other devs and talk shop with people. And I think that's the super fun part. But the craziest thing about the whole experience is that everyone's just going nuts about VR.
Yeah, I mean,
like really.
I can't
crazy.
I can't express how apathetic I am towards VR right now.
Did you get to do it
because
while we were there, Sid?
I did it last GDC. We played Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes.
Oh yeah,
which we also met the dev who made that this year, which was cool. Yeah, I mean it's super cool, but the way I see it is it's everybody keeps talking about VR as being the future of gaming, as in like all gaming is going to go this way. And to me that just doesn't make any sense. Like you're not going to be able to do VR gaming everywhere. Like it takes a pretty involved sensory deprivation kind of a setup, right? Because like you're wearing this thing on your face, you have headphones on, you can't see or hear anything around you whatsoever. And so it's a commitment. Like playing a VR game, you really got to jump into it. You can't just casually do VR, right? So I think there's always going to be room for, sitting in front of a screen or having a phone or whatever in front of you and still being able to sense your surroundings a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's not a bad thing.
I think there might be, it'll probably end up being essentially another platform, right? Just like whatever other new stuff people use. Like there's smartphones, a couple of years ago. I think VR is just going to be yet another cool platform. But really until one of these consoles actually bundles one of the headsets with it, it'll be a long road for that thing.
Well, and even then, though, I mean, the fact is that in the same way that 3D game development, not 3D as in VR, but 3D as in
3D models,
3D game development is way more complicated and human resource intensive and just time consuming to do than 2D game development. VR is another level above that.
Yeah,
and I mean, VR is way harder than regular 3D programming because there are now 1,000 more things you have to pay attention to,
and there's 1,000 ways to make people vomit.
Yeah, that's the biggest one.
Which that's even a problem in just regular 3D dev. You have to be careful of motion sickness stuff.
Yeah, and it gets compounded hugely by VR.
I will say though, I did do this this animated movie short while we were there, where you wear the VR thing and you can kind of wander around. And I looked down and I had this little fat rabbit body, and it was one of the most shocking and hilarious things. And like when you walk around, it kind of slinks around, like it doesn't control you. Your arms don't control with it. But it was, I mean, that was really interesting to see. And like truly, I think, Seth, this comes back to what you were saying about the sensory deprivation, but like it genuinely locks you out of the actual world. Because humans are so eyesight dependent. We're much more eyesight dependent than most mammals anyways. And so like having your entire visual field completely replaced as opposed to, screen replaced in some regard, really, really turns up the immersion a ton.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be both the upside and the downside of VR.
Yeah,
and I can guarantee you, and I think we talked about this a little bit at GDC, but there's going to be a news story soon, within the next couple of years, where somebody was home alone playing games in their VR headset, and somebody comes into their home and robs them and leaves, and the person has no idea that this has happened.
Or even more nefarious stuff could happen.
Yeah, but I mean, you are home, but you are not really there in the sense that you have no concept of what's going on around you. So it's a commitment to play VR. It's for the truly hardcore.
Yeah,
and then otherwise,
which is all to say, I think VR is going to do really awesome stuff. But it's going to be years before, and I don't mean a lot of years, but a few years before it's broadly accessible enough and there's enough standardization that devs can really feel confident developing for it. Because right now it's a very, very risky proposition. Actually, it's sort of like the gold mine days of the App Store, where for the first couple years, when you were one of the few people who could figure out how to develop for it, there weren't that many games, there wasn't a lot of competition, people were still willing to spend money on stuff that you made, and people became instantaneous millionaires launching stuff during the
Actually, I kind of wonder though if it's going to be not quite. It'll be like that for the game devs, but I think on the other side of it, on the hardware side, this is going to look a lot like when video game consoles first started appearing. And the market was flooded with dozens and dozens of different types of consoles that all used different cartridges. And for developers, it was difficult because they had to pick one and develop for that. And nobody knew which one was going to do well or anything. And at some point, everything just completely bottomed out and the whole market collapsed and the Nintendo Entertainment System emerged victorious, right? And then that was kind of like when gaming started really booming because everybody bought the one console and it was very profitable.
It's still, although I would even go so far as to say certainly it dominated the market, but what it really did was it ended up making it so that only a small number, because now it's basically PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, right?
Yeah.
Just a handful of things really, really actually have a presence, and they all still have a huge presence now. But I think VR is going to be the same way, where those exact same powerhouses, except for Nintendo, but those exact same powerhouses are trying to do the same thing with VR. And so they're going to be cutting people out from the get-go because they had the research money to do this in the first place. But kind of like the old console days where computing power was still low enough that every company could have its own angle to do something really new and awesome with their hardware.
Right.
That because people got excited when they switched from 16-bit to 32-bit, right? Like when consoles were coming out. Now, if you talk about the next PlayStation coming out, the next Xbox coming out, you're like, ooh, yeah, it's going to look even more realistic than it already does, which is pretty fucking realistic.
The way hair blows in the breeze is going to be super
we're getting
compelling.
to finer and finer details where the differences between consoles just doesn't really matter that much anymore. But for VR, I mean, the distinction between hardware differences for VR is really important because it has so many new aspects like head tracking, just how fine your pixel density is, how good the lenses are, how good
and there's
other
stuff
peripherals are.
Yeah, there's stuff like whether it tracks your hand movements and
exactly
that kind of thing.
And so all these other aspects of the thing are going to make it so there's now real stuff that these really big powerhouse hardware makers can compete on. So I think we're absolutely going to see an amazing VR war.
It's going to get crazy in the next few years, and it's going to be. I think it's going to be a bubble. There's going to be like what always happens. There's going to be a whole bunch of people rushing in trying to cash in on this, and there's going to be a few victors that emerge.
Well, they're going to deal with it. Well, actually, I don't know, because to me, there's something really particularly interesting about now, which is that it used to be absolutely the case that to develop a game, you not only did you have to choose a platform in the first place, but you couldn't develop a game that worked on multiple platforms at once because the game was tied to the hardware, completely tied to the hardware.
And you put it into a cartridge, or
you put it into a physical cartridge, right?
Yeah.
And that is now not even a little bit true because of things like Unity and GameMaker and other programming environments where you can make a game once in a single language and then use somebody else's, years of research and development to then click a button and make that game work on every platform in the universe.
We truly live in amazing times.
We really do. But so this is cool, right? Because it used to be the case that especially PlayStation and Xbox would be one of the things they fought each other with was exclusive access to AAA titles. And that already almost doesn't happen anymore. There are very few exclusive titles because that was never a good deal for the developers.
Yeah, or if they are exclusive, it's just a very short time frame, like a 3-month or 6-month kind of a thing.
Because that's not good for developers and that's not good for players because players don't give a shit about wars between consoles, right? They just want to play the game. And so I think it's a great thing that this is becoming a thing of the past. But for VR, we're now in this interesting time where because VR is a peripheral, it relies, peripheral as in you attach it to your PC or to your PlayStation or whatever.
Right.
That means that games can be made where the game itself could not only theoretically, but absolutely be played on any existing platform. So things can't compete by getting exclusive titles.
You mean VR headsets can't compete?
Yeah, VR headsets can't compete by having exclusive
They have
titles.
to just work with the games. Yeah,
exactly. So now it's actually going to be that instead of the consoles driving how the world changes and how gaming changes, it's actually going to be the makers of games because the power is moving into their hands instead of
whoa.
So yeah, I think it's going to be really cool to see what this particular battle looks like because it'll tell us a lot about how the games industry has changed because of the massive infrastructure that's been developed with things like Unity and GameMaker.
Yeah, this is going to be weird.
Cool.
We'll have to keep an eye on it. I mean, of course, we make 2D stuff, so it's not really that relevant to us, but it's still pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, it is. It's very cool to watch.
And otherwise, at GDC, we did manage to we got nominated for a couple of different awards, both of which were mobile focused. And it was also kind of weird because most of the awards ceremonies were about games that came out in 2015. So Crashlands was kind of weird because it came out in January of this year. But we did end up getting second place in the Indie Plus Fun Plus Awards.
Yeah, the Fun Plus, the Indie Plus Awards.
Yeah. And that was particularly funny because for some reason the company that put this together was called Fun Plus, and they decided that they needed like a super cool person to be sort of the MC of the event. And so they hired Billy D. Williams, who played Lando Calrissian from Star Wars. to be on the guy on the stage announcing the winners and handing out the awards, which was cool because we got to shake the hand of Lando Calrissian, but at the same time, he clearly he was out of place there. Like he got up on stage and he was just like, "So what is this? This is India Awards? What does that mean?"
Yeah.
And it wasn't a joke. Like he literally did not.
Yeah, he
know.
was good humored about it, but he clearly didn't really know why he was there. And to be fair, nobody knew why he was there.
Because he's Lando Calrissian, that's why.
Yeah, but it was
he
kind
can
of
go
awesome.
wherever he wants.
I have to wonder though, because him being Lando Calrissian was what 40 years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
A long time ago, and of course that's how we know him. But since then he's done all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, is that a bummer for him to just?
Yeah, he's kind of like a polymath actually, right? Like he's like a musician, and I don't know much about him as a person, except that he's been successful for a long time, but kind of in the behind the scenes kind of way. And even in Star Wars, like he was kind of a central character, but not.
Well, this is why you got to do it.
Character.
You got to do it Arnold Schwarzenegger style, which is get super good and peak out at one thing, like being Mr. Universe 6 times in a row or whatever.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, I did that. I'm done doing that. Now I got to go do the next thing to the max.
You're saying whole ass one thing.
Whole ass one thing, but in sequence. So now Arnold
ass end things.
Arnold is known as Muscle Guy plus actor / muscle guy plus governor of California. So,
but even in that context, he was still mostly just muscle guy.
He was still muscle guy, but he's multidimensional in that sense. So I think it was a good approach. And Mr. Billy D. Williams maybe didn't quite nail it as hard as
he was
Arnold
trying
did.
to be good, and maybe was good, but just at too many things.
Yeah, whole ass one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, that's it, right? That's all that happened at GDC.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everybody was pumped about VR.
Yeah. Overall, great experience. We got diseased, met a lot of cool people, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
GDC's done.
Yeah. So then we got back. We were all sick for a week and had a miserable week back. But then we got back back in the saddle, and we have just put out the Crashlands Quality of Life final patch into the beta channels, and we have a post up in the Crashlands subreddit about how that's going and how you can get in there and test it. We have all kinds of sweet new features, including a brand new world map that has pinch zoom, and you can rub your finger all over it to pan it
drag it around,
and it shows NPCs that have quests available or quests ready to be turned in, so you can actually find out where to get new quests.
It also shows pets. For those of you who are maniacs and for some reason just put your pets randomly in the world.
Or people will let their toddlers play, and their toddler will go just to a random place in the world and open up build mode and just put all their pets down just somewhere in the world and then just leave. So then they'll pick up the game again, the parent will, and they'll be like, "What the hell?" And they have no pets and they have no way to get their pets back. So now you will.
You could see it.
That's good. And we also have some pretty cool news about the Crashlands documentary. Well, it's more of I guess it's a behind the scenes Crashlands documentary, kind of about the development and the story behind it with Sam's cancer stuff and the launch of the game and all that. It's called Brace for Impact, and it's being made by Forever an Astronaut, which is a local studio here in St. Louis. And they just put a Kickstarter up. Do we have a link for that?
We do. It's a bit.ly/Crashlands movie.
Why do you always say bit.ly? That isn't.
It's called a bit.ly.
But that sounds like LEE.
Yeah. It's bit.ly/Crashlands movie.
Is it fair? So I keep on hearing people say URLs and they always say /. Is it just not, do people still not know that it's always a goddamn /? Is that?
I don't know.
Is
Does
that
it
how
matter
Universe
even?
works?
If you put a backslash on a URL, will it break?
Auto fix it? I mean, in principle it should, but probably everything fixes that now. I have no idea.
I don't know.
But same thing with Bitly, right? Who doesn't know what Bitly links are?
Probably a couple people. But yeah, so if you go to bit.ly/Crashlands movie, you can back the Kickstarter to help get the movie finished. And I also want to throw in a disclaimer, which is we are not financially involved in this film.
True.
We have no stake financially in it. We are not getting any proceeds from the sales or anything.
Well, I did back it on Kickstarter so I can get a copy.
Yeah,
I did do that.
You can kind of think of the Kickstarter like a pre-order.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we aren't paying for production of the movie. We aren't getting money from it. It's all the project being done by Forever an Astronaut, and they've taken it entirely on their shoulders, and they're working their asses off. So definitely check it out. They're doing a great job with that. Okay, so there's one last news item, which
it's too real, Seth. It's too real.
Which we kind of talked about this. We talked about this the week after Crashlands launched. And it's the idea of this kind of post-launch slump, I guess you would call it. It's a thing that happens where after you put a game out, it becomes really difficult to work on new things because you have this giant behemoth that a whole bunch of people are playing, lots of people are talking about. And every time you do something with it, like add a patch or whatever, then that immediately gets you feedback and people are excited about it and whatever. There's a community already built around it, and working on something entirely new basically means leaving that party and, going back into your lonely cave for a year or two.
Well, it's not only that, though. It's also that we've been living and breathing that project. So it's what we've thought about. Even the launch part aside and the social aspects of interacting with people who are playing the game and all that stuff. Even taking that out, the thing is done.
Yeah.
It's literally the only thing we've worried about.
Well, it
for
feels like we've gone from being game developers to being Crashlands developers, right?
Well, I think we absolutely were.
Yeah, because for 2 years we were not developing games. We were just making a game, just one game. And the consequences of that have been really interesting.
Yeah, there's a weird sort of psychological effect to that, which is that it used to be very easy for us to sort of freewheel and deal and make up new crap and start building it and not care and all that stuff. And after doing dev on just this one huge game for 2 years, which not only is massive, but also which we thought we saw the end of for probably about 8 months before launch, which meant that we really, really dug in, about halfway through last year, and really to the extent of almost everything else in our lives, just focused on that. I mean, I don't have hobbies anymore. I don't really do much outside
of Crashlands.
Just been Crashlands, just doing it. And so as a result, there's this weird thing that's happened where now that pressure's come off, all of us have sort of been figuring out how to deal with the weirdness of that void. And like I said, we did talk about this a little bit the week after launch, and I'm pretty sure at the time.
Well, we were very dismissive about it.
We were naive. We were like, oh, well, we think we got this under control. It's not a big deal. We're already cooking it. It's whatever. Definitely not the case. After.
Well, no, it was actually more that at that time, and it still is true. At that time, we were like, there's still enough that has to be done with the game that it didn't feel launched.
Yeah,
that was more.
We had tons of patching to do and work.
And it was true. I mean, we faced no slump whatsoever. And the fact is, we're still not in a slump in the sense that we feel like we've got stuff to do and it's productive. The problem though is that we are ready because now, I mean, where we are with Crashlands is that quality of life patch is now done. Seth finished that. So that'll be out in a few weeks, which means now his job is done for a while. Sam's job is done for a while. And now it falls on me to finish the thing up because that's the creator patch and that's all on the website. That means that Sam and Seth could now, in principle, get started on the next game.
In principle.
And that's where the problem comes from.
Yeah, because it's just the case that after working on one thing for 2 years, to the extent where we say, here's all the systems, we just need to fill out the content, don't have any more ideas because we simply don't have time to put that crap in, which is
we didn't want ideas.
It's been a whole year of shutting down new ideas.
So now suddenly,
so we can finish Crashlands.
Yeah, now suddenly we're like, all right, let's turn the new ideas on, guys. Just turn the faucet. Let's go.
Turn it back on.
And that turns out to be slightly more difficult than we imagined.
No. It's not even that turning on ideas is hard. It's that we still are rejecting every idea we come up with.
Yeah, almost immediately.
Because we've gotten so used, because we never stopped coming up with ideas. We just got really good at suppressing every new idea before it turned into work.
Yeah.
And now like all we can do is suppress every idea that comes up.
But we have a solution. We have a cure.
Do we?
Maybe. We're going to
Yes.
try it. It's an experimental cure.
Yeah, I mean the cure for this is game jams. I'm 100% confident about that. In a game jam, you're basically, it's just a freewheeling, make something crazy in a short time span with no intention of it being commercially viable or popular or even functional. And just try to make it and see what happens.
Well,
So-
you do try to make it at least somewhat functional.
Well, you try to, but it might not end up that way.
Yeah, it may end up being.
And that's okay, because who gives a shit? It's a jam game. So I think our plan is right now we're gonna spend a little bit of time doing some research and playing some games that are out there that we've been really interested in that are doing cool stuff, and we're also gonna do several in-house game jams where we just make some weird shit to kind of shake off the what do you call it? Shake off the dust,
The
of
rust,
Crashlands.
I guess, probably more so.
The rust,
Yeah.
yeah.
And get moving. So we'll I don't know, we might post those jam games publicly.
I think if we can, if they're
playable.
unless there's a really good reason not to, I think we absolutely should make them available. So
Yeah, and they
be
may
on the
not
lookout for that.
They may not be hooked up to Bscotch ID, or they may not be fully. They probably won't be fully fleshed out, and that's fine. They'll just be fun little experiments for us to kind of get our heads back in the game. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully it'll be fun, to say the least.
I think it will be.
Okay, well, let's move on to questions.
Yeah.
And these questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. They are mostly asked by Bscotch ID members, although they can be asked anonymously. And every time we do a podcast, we run through all the questions and pick the ones that we think are going to sort of foster the most interesting discussion. So if you want to ask questions, head on over to podcast.bscotch.net and make it interesting.
Okay.
And don't forget, it's a /.
Yeah, if you go to /, you'll probably end up God knows where.
The dark side of the internet, I think, is where those go.
The dark net.
All right, so I want to start us off with a really good, deep, serious question by Brand 1415, which is
Deep serious.
if you could cover your entire body with a substance, what would it be and why?
The main reason I like this question is purely because somebody thought to ask it. It's just such
this is
a
also
weird question.
There's some weird questions that you get that like you've heard before, kind of.
Yeah, I have not.
I've
heard
never
this
heard-
question in any context.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
I
very
have an
idea of this.
answer, but my answer starts with a question because I'm not sure if this is okay.
Okay.
Does a robotic exoskeleton count as a substance?
I think a substance has to be homogeneous.
Okay, well in that case, wax.
You would cover your whole body with wax?
Yeah, I would just wax myself.
Like hot wax?
Yeah, like for waxing. That way I'm super smooth afterwards.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the amount of pain that would unleash on your body? You would
yeah,
wax
but
your whole
the
body?
benefits would be outstanding.
I mean, you would be very
You'd be
smooth.
so smooth.
Would they outweigh the cost?
Hey, pain is temporary. Smoothness lasts for about a week. So
That's
It's
true.
not forever though.
no. You got to keep dunking yourself into the wax bucket.
So
every
why
week.
not then cover if you're going for a hair loss strategy here for some reason? Why not go with like Nair?
I feel
or
like
something?
I feel like the chemicals in Nair, if you put them on your whole body at once, would probably pickle you.
Yeah,
or
Nair, well,
something.
Nair also has a big warning. So there are different oils, and I know about this. I've heard about this. There are different oils in different areas on your body that if Nair gets applied to them, it creates a chemical burn.
Whoa, what?
Specifically in your more sensitive areas.
Oh, good God.
So I think if you Nair your arm, basically anywhere that there's like a crease, so between your legs and in your armpits and stuff.
so
you'll
don't
get some.
if you're listening to this, kids,
Don't
don't-
Nair your sack.
don't Nair your creases. It's just not a good move.
It would be bad.
All right, Adam, what
Actually,
about
I
you?
think I remember. So back in high school when we were all in swimming, we had to shave our legs
Yeah.
before we went to the final swim stuff. So the goal is you grow as much hair as possible during the swim season as drag, right?
You just get bushy.
You just get bushy everywhere.
You become
and
a
then
bushman.
when it comes to your major competitive events, you just shave down head to toe, or at least put a swim cap on and shave everything else.
Head to tip.
I remember trying to get the hair off of my legs in some reasonable fashion. In every way, it completely sucked. So for everybody who does this every day, I'm super sorry. But I remember trying Nair.
How'd it go?
It did, and it was on my legs, but it was really burning. Like it provided a lot of burning sensation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dissolving the hair.
Yeah,
with
that's
the
what it would
have
acid,
to, right?
right?
It's like Drano.
Yeah.
It melts what you put it on. But that is way better than
probably one of the worst things you could put on your skin. Now that I think about it.
Do you remember though? That friend of ours, DJ, who on the way to the final swim meet had forgotten to shave his legs, and so in the bus took a razor and just dry shaved his legs.
He did it dry. Oh man,
that was the most disturbing result.
Yeah, the next day his legs, he looked like he was just walking on two just like ground slabs of hamburger.
It was disgusting and terrible.
It was horrifying.
Adam, what would you choose?
Horrible.
What are you going to cover your whole body with?
Cover myself in a substance. Now, the other thing I could think of that I really would want to cover myself in would either be some sort of nice oil, like a massage oil. Right, like a good smelling one, or a lotion. But I think lotion probably doesn't count because it gets absorbed. So I'd have to say a really nice.
I mean, if you want to if you want to meet the criteria of the question, you'd have to put on enough lotion that you absorb it, and then another layer,
have a layer
that you can't absorb. So you just.
I think that might make your skin come off or something horrible.
You just be
I'm gonna go
wet,
with
lotiony guy.
I just want a lavender scented massage oil.
That's very nice, Adam.
Yeah,
man,
that's pretty good.
You remember when out at the old house we had a swimming pond and there was a dock on it, and we would dive down off the dock to the bottom of the water, which is like probably 15 feet-ish.
Yeah,
and get that super gross mud.
Grab the mud silt from the bottom and then bring it up and put it on the dock, and then we'd cover ourselves.
It was very soft mud.
It was incredibly soft.
It was.
It was probably full of leeches, but whatever.
Well, no, I mean leeches. Who cares about? But it was also full of dragonfly larvae.
That was the bad one because
those bite the shit out of you.
That's true.
How do they hurt so bad? They're like 2 inches.
I mean, you've seen their jaws though, right? Their jaws are these crazy.
I guess they are like made of jaws, actually.
Yeah, they're pretty horrifying.
I think I would cover myself with.
Why the fuck do they need jaws that are that big?
They eat fish and stuff.
They eat like
entire
everything.
fish?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, little ones, but
God.
Yeah, dude. They eat like frogs and shit if they can catch them.
Okay, sorry. What were you gonna say, Sam? You're gonna cover yourself with
I'm gonna cover myself in $100 bills. Just a coating of
how
money.
thick?
As thick as my body will tolerate.
So you'll just encase yourself in like a solid
armor ball of $100 bills, and then that
do you get to keep them afterwards, or do you just have to?
I'm assuming I get to keep them afterwards. That's why I'm.
But I think the problem though is that as soon as you pay with one of those bills, then you've now removed a part of that substance from your body. Well,
this isn't a permanent situation. This is just a one-time coverage. I thought.
So you're saying
I thought I didn't know.
So you're just going to cover yourself
for
all
the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so the situation here is you find a genie. We'll call him the skin
body
substance genie. Yeah.
Now, man, you don't want to use a genie. Genies are so dubious.
You got to be very
Devious?
specific.
Devious, even.
Yeah.
Well,
let's say a genie who just tells it like it is.
Okay, well, a straight talking genie.
Straight talking genie.
An STG, if you will.
A straight talking body substance.
We need to get ourselves an STG of the body substance.
You're gonna deal with a genie. You make sure he's a straight shooter, because
absolutely. So now the criterion he lays out is he says, all right, I'm going to give you one wish, and that wish can only be for a substance that will cover your entire body at this very moment.
Yeah.
Now, under this circumstance, you would say $100 bills, because then that's a nice dense way to cover yourself with something you can then use after the fact.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think. I mean, if you take the general,
think of how much wax you could buy with all those $100 bills.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could do all the other ones.
Massage oil.
Yeah, you could do all the other ones with that one. I mean, like, what's the general surface area of the average human?
Well, no, but more importantly, what's the general surface area that can be covered with dollar bills, right? Because these are now large rectangles. Would they actually have to be cut to make a polygonal sort of model?
No,
of
I
your
think
body?
It would be kind of like you ever put paper mache on a thing? You just kind of like,
this is a money mache situation.
You're gonna grind up the money.
No, you're just gonna keep layering it on at different angles and stuff until you cover every available spot. Some of the more curvaceous areas of the body might be pretty hard to manage, or
the creases. The creases are always hard to shove money into.
Yeah,
it's just a fact.
They're easy to shove nair into, though.
They're too easy. Some would say. All right, we're going to move on to the next question, which is from Kevin88.
Kevin88.
This is a Crashlands question. He says, a lot of people, or maybe just a few, have asked about Crashlands 2. What are your thoughts on sequels? Do you like them? What does a good sequel need?
I like them. Well, sometimes. I like good sequels.
I like the idea in general. I think it's great. Also, from a business perspective, they make a lot of sense because
people like them.
Sequels always do better than their previous versions, even if they're terrible.
Yeah, sequels are super dangerous. It is if you're a person, if you're a studio or somebody who's making the thing, right, and you really care about this intellectual property you made, like you love your characters and that kind of thing. Sequels are really dangerous because it's almost always true that people are upset by the contents of a sequel.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people.
Well, I think
it's rare that somebody watches a sequel and are like, "Ooh, I like that as much or better than the previous one." Because even though most people will still like it,
well, you're thinking of movies though,
and books.
Yeah, I'm thinking of games,
I think games are a little different because
I think games people have come to expect that a sequel literally means the exact same game again with better graphics.
Or a different story or something.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. But I mean, I think in the case of Crashlands and the question of what does a good sequel need? Really, you take what you did, and then you take some of the stuff that you couldn't do either because of time or technical limitations or whatever else, and then you also do that.
A sequel is like doing a post-mortem almost.
Right.
Like you look
very
back.
labor-intensive post-mortem.
Yeah, you just look back and you're like, okay, what did we do badly? What if we just made this game again, but did the bad things less badly?
I mean, I prefer the things that are based in the same universe. So take the various Marvel movies on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These are those as a thing. Those are sequels to other media that already existed, right? Because it's a continuation of the Marvel universe, which has been around for a long time. And in some ways, or take like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? In a lot of ways, that thing is a sequel to the Avengers movie. Right.
Well, it actually runs in parallel. So there's a point.
Exactly.
There's a point at which I think in season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. they reference it. They reference the Avengers.
And in season 1, they do it in both.
Yeah.
So I like these kinds of things because what they do is they have their entire own thing that refers to and uses other existing things, so that in a way it's still a sequel because it depends on that prior work, but that dependence is reduced enough that people don't see it as a simple either duplication with improvement or a single continuation of the prior thing. Because I think in both of those cases you just run into a risk where it's kind of hard to have one really good coherent story and coherent piece of media and then basically just kind of make version 2 of that.
Yeah,
in a way that's really interesting.
I think that's always the hard part. I think the interesting thing about games, though, like Seth was saying, is that the difference is that you're not just dealing with narrative.
You get to mechanically have the player do different things.
Sure, yeah.
So when you get to expand the world in that regard, like you can't expand the amount of interactions that someone gets to have with the sequel to an Avengers movie, for example. You get to expand what the narrative can do and maybe add some new characters or whatever else, but it's still all narrative based at the end of the day. But I think the cool part about games that do sequels really well is that they just slowly kind of tack on a few additional features that maybe they couldn't get in on the first go round, and then you keep on building out the world from there. And then if you do it really well, then you can actually use those to tell a part of the story or have the player play through a part of the story that literally would not have been possible in a previous game. And that's I think where game sequels can be really, really neato.
So yeah, I think it can be done. But then what that leads to the question though is if you're going to start changing the mechanics in an interesting way, do new things and so on, like why not also diversify it further to expand and branch out the story?
Yeah, I think
as you start describing it this way, really what you're saying, because I'm think of like the Fallout series.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of weird to call those sequels because the part that's a sequel is that most of the game mechanics are the same.
Right. Yeah, it's the same game.
The setting is the same and the mechanics are the same.
Well, the setting. Well, the setting,
the universe, the time, is the same. Yeah, the universe is the same.
Yeah, but actually, like the games take place maybe 50 years apart, totally different characters. There is, of course, some referencing of previous events, but it doesn't, because I guess when I think of a sequel, I think of like literally has the same characters. It's a continuation of a story, that sort of thing. It is true in games too, but I think in games, the things that people call a sequel probably mostly are about mechanics and setting.
Yep, they're mechanical sequels rather than narrative sequels, I think.
I don't. Well,
I guess they can be. I guess is my point. So even if you think about something like Diablo is one of the easiest ones because the narrative has actually been the exact same narrative.
The narrative is
time.
Diablo is here.
Shit, kill it, and then and then everybody freaks out and they do that.
Yeah, to me that's just like the Diablo series just basically gets sequel in that case means the same game with better graphics and
cool
modified,
mechanics,
updated
yeah, modified mechanics.
Absolutely. And I think, when it comes to a Crashlands 2 concept, I think there's plenty of cool stuff that we could add or do, whatever else. I mean, there's always so much.
Aside
room.
from it being an MMO, which it will be.
Right. Yeah. Crashlands MMO.
Yeah.
That's what we'll call it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm not sure about my opinion on sequels. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you want to be the studio, if we wanted to be the studio that makes Crashlands, and that was our goal, then yeah, we'll just fucking do these forever until the end of time, right? We'll just make Crashlands 2 and then 3 and then 4. But if we want to build a universe of stuff and be known as a studio that makes cool games within that universe, I would much rather make games that are all kind of related, but that aren't explicitly tied to each other so strongly that people would call them a sequel.
Oh yeah. Well, if you look at the trajectory, we have at times referenced Towel Fight as being a prequel to Quadrupus, and Quadrupus as being a prequel to Crashlands.
Well, it's because they are, in the sense that they're in the same universe. They take place one after another. They
reference
of the stories. They reference each other.
Story, yeah.
Right.
So those are sequels.
So I guess what I think then is I like the idea of narrative sequels where actually we kind of swap out and slowly change the character or change the part of the story we're telling, right? But without the mechanics being just obvious direct sequels.
Yeah. Well, it's more fun for us that way, I think.
Yeah, it's more fun and interesting.
All right, next question, which is also conveniently related to this idea of the Butterscotch universe. Comes from Australia #1 fan Mia Kitty, who says, the all-important question that came up when playing Quadrupus this week. Is the Butterscotch universe a binary genderverse? I know there's a lot of he, which is tack, and she, which is flux in the case of Crashlands, but is that just our interpretation of their gender? So it's interesting. This is always a fun one. So just because people on the internet are very angry about the genders of things. Kind of as a rule. Either way you go, people get angry about stuff.
Yeah.
But I think this is actually something that I considered while doing most of the story writing, is that Adam and I think I actually had like an hour-long discussion one day where I was really aggravated because I was making some new Brubus characters, and I had I was just noticing that I had way more dudes doing stuff than I had ladies in the Brubus colony. And then I was like, why does this matter? These are like bubble aliens shaped like birds,
and they don't even reproduce. They just emerge from the bog.
They're completely asexual in nature. Like
they're not even they're non-sexual.
Yeah.
They don't reproduce.
But the reality is that for the use of English, for the use of any language for a storytelling medium, because of the fact that humans are binary in nature, or at least, maybe not completely binary. Culturally more so, then it makes it very difficult to try to do something that has any sort of gender fluidity to it when it comes to talking about characters.
Yeah, there's no gender, or there's no non-gendered term to refer to a person, right?
Right.
He or she, him or her.
And so I think as a result, you're just going to get, the stories that you get are going to, even if they're not necessarily, or if it makes no sense for them to be gendered, they have to be in order for you to talk about them, which is an interesting sort of linguistic kind of constraint that we have, right? Which is, as Seth said, there's no easy way to actually just say, like, it's a Brubus. It's a different,
it's just a Brubus.
It's just a Brubus.
But I think the important thing to note, though, is no matter what gender gets arbitrarily assigned to the characters, it has no bearing on the story.
What we actually do is we do arbitrarily assign genders to things, and it never has a bearing. What we can,
it's not
say
like
about
the woman always
universe,
gets kidnapped and the man always saves the day, and blah,
well, we
blah,
don't
blah.
even have that story. Well, I guess we have other things getting kidnapped.
A dog.
Packages.
Quit with the spoilers, guys.
Sorry.
Jeez. But yeah, so to us, it's important to build a universe where the characters don't give a shit about gender.
It's just not a thing.
And it's not a thing that has an impact on how people in the Butterscotch universe view each other, or people and aliens and so on, right? And as Sam and Seth are saying, we still need to use gender identifiers to actually refer to things, because that's how English works. But I think it's also true that, most people, not everyone, but most people identify with one gender or another. And one thing that people do, or like to argue, is that that they just want to choose one, they just say it doesn't matter and then choose one for convenience. But the fact is, that's not good either, right? Because then even if it's the case that gender doesn't mean anything in the universe we've created, people, since it means something to them and they identify with gender, they want to feel like they're represented in games.
True.
So by actually having things be referred to as he or she, it helps people identify them with them in a meaningful way, because that is part of how people identify.
Right.
Maybe in the future we should just flip a coin. For every character we make, just flip a coin.
Essentially what
This is what I did in my mind. Yeah. For me, it was actually mostly just I basically kind of did it with every other character that I made. I would just try to remember if the last one I made was male or female, then I would do the opposite for the next one, so I could get a roughly 50-50 split. And as some astute, as a very small number of astute players have noted, there are a few characters whose genders change a few times during the story because we forgot which one they were. But
because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And so you could even treat that as, and it would be fine if you treated that as intentional, because of the fact that gender doesn't mean anything.
And also we're talking about aliens who,
yeah,
the Brubus emerged from the bog, the Tendrum are part plant.
Yeah, I don't even know how I don't know how reproduction even, I haven't thought about that yet.
Yeah.
But even all the creatures in general in Crashlands, we have a few of the name modifiers are things like bull or
matriarch
and whatever,
queen,
sort of implying a gender, right? But you can knock an egg out of any creature.
Yeah. Yeah. A bull wompet can drop an egg or whatever.
Yeah. And so the way that our explanation of that is either, we haven't really chosen one exactly, is either that the biology is just like that, meaning there's literally no such thing as a male-female split, or that the creatures themselves and the people around them are either self-identify however they want or don't give a crap, so they arbitrarily choose. Mm-hmm. So we're referring to them how they want to be referred to, and then they just happen to be male or female, if that's even a thing that exists in our universe.
Yeah. So there's
we don't know. Doesn't even matter.
Yep.
We don't know, and it doesn't even matter. Butterscotch shenanigans. Our next question comes from Pixel and Bracket, and this is a biznaz question.
Biznaz.
And the question is there a Butterscotch studio space in the works? So
no.
We talked about expanding. So, but why? There's the question of why. Why not? Why not get a building?
Well, here's why. It costs money to have a studio space, and it doesn't do anything with regard to the games that you produce.
Well, it makes them more expensive.
It raises the bar of how many sales you have to get for it to be considered a successful game, because you spend more money making it, but all you need is a friggin' laptop and probably an internet connection.
We were actually making this joke a lot when we were running around GDC, because we would carry our laptops in our bags with us, and at any point, we had actually multiple times, we would just sit down at a table and all open our laptops, and then someone would make a joke about how we just deployed our office.
Yeah.
The whole office is just
our
us
entire
with laptops.
office fits into 3 backpacks.
And there's something nice about keeping your burn rate just low where you can. So obviously, if in the future we get up to a few more people in the shop, then we'll probably just need to get our own space for the sake of not being able to put everybody in the same room together. But at least for now and the foreseeable future, it's not going to be an issue, which is cool.
Yeah. And even if we bring another 1 or 2 people into the studio, we actually still have space in our apartments that we could make that work. So there's no need. It adds nothing and only costs stuff.
Yeah.
Butterscotch shenanigans. Yeah.
Plus, if you have a home or a place where you can take a room and dedicate it to that task, you get some tax benefits.
It's true.
That's true.
You get
Yeah,
off the square footage.
You can deduct that. It's money you already had to spend on the place you're living, but now you just don't pay as much in taxes. Boom.
Win-win-win.
Yep.
All right, next question. I wanted to get to this one because it's interesting and potentially controversial.
I will say we'll probably do an extra 10 minutes or so on this podcast to make up for the 2 weeks that we missed.
Yeah. So this one comes from Alan Falcon, who asks, as developers who embrace Let's Plays, how do you respond to the developer of That Dragon Cancer accusing some YouTubers of essentially causing them to lose income? Should Let's Plays be licensed deals or open to everyone? So could someone fill everybody in on the backstory here? One of you
I personally do not know the backstory, and I
can tell it to you.
Okay.
Instead of you making it up. The guy behind That Dragon Cancer, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a game made by a guy who lost his very young son to, I think, a form of leukemia or something. And he spent a few years sort of exploring that and trying to express it in the context of a digital work of art that some people may call a game, some people may not. doesn't matter for the context of this.
Well, I think it does matter for the context of this, but go ahead.
Actually, you're right. It probably will. So anyways, that's what this game is. He wrote up an article a few days ago. I can't remember. It was very recent anyway, a week ago. And it wasn't, some people, of course, freaked out about it because they thought he was implying that Let's Players are a bad thing and are damaging the industry or whatever. But basically what it came down to is he was trying to explain why. I think a few YouTubers had gotten takedown notices or something. And it was actually because the sound, as I understand it, the sound and music was just like we have it, was done by another studio. It was still owned by them, and they just licensed it for use in the game. And it was actually the music studio who was originally anyway, who was upset that all these like YouTubers and Let's Players were basically stripping out the music from the game and uploading it separately and doing all this kind of stuff, right? Or just doing Let's Plays where it was basically just the player playing the game without any commentary. So it was effectively like listening to the music of the game.
Yep.
So that was kind of where the thing started, and then it got into a more general sort of idea of the problem. And so he just wrote up a very actually totally reasonable, sound article about the potential problems with Let's Plays, where he basically summed it up by saying, unless you're actually adding value to your video of the game, then you are actually taking away value from the developers of the game by posting the entirety of its contents without doing anything else.
Yeah, so this is where I think the type of the game it is matters.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Because if you watch somebody doing a Let's Play, let's say somebody's Twitch streaming or something, Rocket League, you are not going to get the experience of what it's like to play Rocket League by watching that video. You will get a glimpse into how insane it is. But when you go and play it, it's an extreme test of skill, and it's chaos, and it's hilarious and whatever. But it's all because it's a very, very mechanical game. There's a lot of action. It's very physics-based and stuff.
The experience that's important is the experience of being the person playing the game.
Yeah. And I think in the case of something like That Dragon Cancer, we talked about Firewatch a while back as also being in the same game, same vein, which is basically a type of game that is almost entirely focused on narrative and not on mechanical elements, which, as Sam, I think you had said, as far as Firewatch went, it felt like it was closer to watching a movie than playing a game. And I think That Dragon Cancer is probably, in that same space.
So. I think it's more linear than Firewatch was.
Yeah. And so in a weird way with a game like that, I would actually probably agree that a Let's Player does harm to the sales of that game, because you get almost the same experience of watching somebody just play it as you would playing it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, when your decisions in the game don't impact it.
Yeah, you just go linearly through a preconceived story where you don't really have any major actions that you can take, and what you do doesn't affect much, and it's not very, very mechanical, right?
Right.
Or mechanics based.
We've talked about this before, about how we currently lack the language necessary to actually accurately describe some of these new works that are coming out, from Firewatch to That Dragon Cancer. I think they're in the same sort of category. But classifying them as games in this particular case is a little rough when it comes to the general nature of games as far as how they're consumed on a media level, which is through a lot of these Let's Plays and the Twitch channels and stuff. Because if it is a game, then yeah, it seems like it makes perfectly reasonable sense for you to do a Let's Play of it, put it online, whatever else. But if in reality it's a game that works more on a narrative level and works actually more like a movie, then you don't get full copyrighted movies on YouTube, right?
You don't have somebody go, let's do a let's watch of Batman vs Superman. I'm gonna go to the theater and I'm gonna put a camera on my face and I'm gonna film the fucking movie screen and I'm gonna live stream it onto Twitch,
right?
Because that would literally harm the sales of that movie, right? Because now you could just watch the movie at home.
Yeah, and it's because these things are somewhere in between a game where you have a really active involvement with what the game does, right? And a movie where you have no power at all over how the thing unfolds.
So it really just has to do with the more passive the player is as a participant in the game, the more harm harm will be done to the game by YouTube videos.
I think that's fair.
If the player is a very active participant in the game, then I think the opposite would be true, right? Where
but I think the interesting thing is that you're really doomed no matter what, honestly, as a developer, because I mean, as you saw with this, like there's a bunch of this. Of course, the internet tends to catch on fire about many stupid things, but there's plenty of outrage that came out of this, right? Because, like you said, Seth, YouTubers...
People love their YouTube videos.
Yeah, and YouTubers are like, what, I'm getting this takedown notice, which they weren't getting it for this particular reason, but, the thought was that this was a developer who was anti-Let's Plays, which we know from, like, Nintendo, when they did that thing where Nintendo tried to monetize people's videos or whatever, that everyone loses their minds over. And so it's interesting because they're in the game playing space, like
because everybody insists on calling it a game.
Yeah, so
you got to play by the rules
have to
of
do
games.
a Let's Play. Yeah,
Which
you have
sucks.
to allow it when in reality it may not actually fit the model that you're using very well. So
Totally
it's very hard, honestly. And I think it puts people in a rough spot because what are your options there? You either say, okay, you can do the Let's Play, in which case, very likely you're not able to capture sales off of those things because people view the watching of that narrative unfold as the equivalent of, playing the game. And so as a result, you're not going to get a sale from anybody. Or you say, no, you can't. And then everyone loses their collective minds and you also don't get exposure from that. So that's just a rough place to be. Like there's not a good space for these sorts of things right now. I think it is the reality.
Once again, it just comes right back down to us not having the vocabulary to know what to call this thing. So we call it a game, and now all of a sudden it gets treated like one, and it really shouldn't because it's to its detriment.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the other key part of that whole argument or the whole discussion is about the value that a YouTuber adds on top of it, because a good Let's Play is actually about the person playing the game. It's just barely about the game. And what that does, it allows that person to serve as an entertainer who entertains by their responses and commentary on top of gameplay.
Right. And you'll notice, I mean, if you actually look at any of the really, really big YouTubers, they all have that same line in their work, which is it's extremely active on their part and extremely personality focused.
Yeah.
It's not about the game at
Absolutely.
the end of the day. And we've even had dev friends who have said, oh yeah, I got my game played by Jacksepticeye or Markiplier or something, and it did nothing for the sales because
people aren't watching
there
it for the
that.
game.
They're not watching it for the game. They're watching it for the guys.
They're a Markiplier fan or whatever.
Yeah, but if you see Markiplier playing Rocket League, which is a really good example. I mean, the reason that I got Rocket League was because I watched a very brief Let's Play of it for like a minute, and immediately I was like, this is a game I have to go play.
It looks like too much fun. Yeah.
It looks like too much fun. And it's because the person playing it was having a blast. The game itself looked like so much fun. I was like, I want to have the same experience, right? And so what a YouTuber is doing is selling the experience playing the game. The less value they add, meaning the less personality they put on top of it, and the more linear the game is, meaning the fewer player decisions that can be made or mechanics that can be used, the worse that situation gets.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it is true for actiony games too, that purely posting a non-value added game content really isn't okay. Like that doesn't do anything.
Well,
good.
I think it doesn't
do anything for anybody.
I think it doesn't matter because the people who just post videos
That's true.
of the gameplay, they don't get any subscribers or views. Nobody cares,
Yeah,
so
that's accurate.
it just doesn't affect anything. But don't give keys to people who do that.
No, and actually,
at least
most
make
people
them
who
buy
asked
it.
us for keys. Yeah, exactly. Most people who asked us for keys were running for Crashlands. Were running YouTube channels that were exactly like that.
Just silent, no
It's
commentary,
silent or
gameplay.
a very small amount of commentary, which is mostly just kind of slight responses to what was happening.
Yeah, not good enough. Take it up a notch, guys. Come on, get your head in the game.
All right, we'll do the final question of the day, I think, right? Is it time?
Yep. Sure.
All right, the final question. We'll do a business question again. This one comes from G Carr, who asks, if you could have a game be a commercial success but quickly forgotten, that's option A, or do poor in sales but be a very memorable experience for those who play it, that's B, which would you choose and why?
We've done both of those.
We have. I would choose A.
Absolutely.
Because that's going to happen actually on accident. It has to us before, as far as, or I guess not, it hasn't actually, that particular aspect hasn't happened to us, but the idea in the latter one of having one that people respect a lot and have a great time with, but it doesn't actually make any money for the studio.
Like Telefight 2.
Yeah, that's a death rattle for us. Like, that's really bad because
We have to at least make some minimum threshold of income to keep operating.
Right. Yep. And so ideally, ideally you have a game that is a commercial success and that is not forgettable at the end of the day.
Well, of course. But if you can't have that, you're a hell of a lot better off with a commercial success because it'll allow you to make the next game,
which might be both.
That might
try
be
to
both.
do a better job of making it memorable.
Right. Yeah, this is one of those things that if you were a true artist who didn't give a shit about being financially viable, I'm not even saying successful, but viable, then you would probably choose the latter option, right? Because you're in it for the making of games. But the fact is, you have to be extremely privileged in life to be able to do that and get away with it.
Just be like, I just don't care about having money at all.
Yeah, the only way you can do it is if you already have enough money.
Yeah.
That's true.
And we, if we're lucky enough as a studio to get to that place where we just have an infinite runway and it doesn't matter what we do, then in that case, I would much rather end up in the latter camp. Because again, then we're privileged as fuck and it doesn't actually matter financially what we do. And then I'd rather just spend my time making games that people like.
Just do whatever you want.
Yeah. This answer just comes from where exactly your place of privilege is, probably.
Yeah, well, it's weird though, because we've had the privilege of having very supportive spouses who who have literally they've been our breadwinners.
I mean, they funded development
while we've been they were helping pay to keep us alive while we worked on Crashlands and did all this stuff, and even with that, at no point were we like, well, I guess we just don't have to give a shit about money then, right? Because like
right.
we all were very grateful, but we also felt
we should be able to contribute.
Yeah,
something.
we wanted to be able to contribute to our families and our home lives and everything, and.
Well, and more importantly, it's nice if you can then return the favor to someone who supports you, right? To be able to turn around and say, you got me here, now let me get you to wherever you want to go next.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the case of us, Diana's now my fiance's doing her own nonprofit thing now, as opposed to work on her 9 to 5. That's the trade, you know, and that's a good way to do it.
You work as a team with your spouse. Right. So, all right. Well, I think that's all the time we have. We went a little bit over because of our 2-week hiatus. So, who knows? Maybe we'll throw an extra 3 or 4 minutes in next week too, just to kind of finish tipping the scales. And also, I want to thank Fat Bard for doing our editing. He has edited the past 5 or so podcasts, and he's doing a great job. And it's taken a huge load off of our shoulders, backs, minds,
eyeballs, ears.
It's taken some kind of thing off of some other kind of thing, and it's been super helpful. So thank you, Fat Bard, for that. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And if you want to check out our games, head on over to games.bscotch.net. We have stuff for Android, iOS, PC, and Mac. So we have something if you have something with a screen on it, you can play one of our games.
Unless it's just a TV.
Yeah, but we're working on that.
True fact.
Also, you can join.
Are we? No,
yeah,
we're not.
Totally.
Okay.
Maybe. Don't worry about it. You can also join our community at forums.bscotch.net. We have a whole bunch of people there all the time, yammering away, and we pop in there as well. And you can also ask us questions for the next week's podcast over at podcast.bscotch.net. All right, that's all we got for y'all. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.